All right. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Um, Again, hope you had a great day. Please respond. First, we had a great day. So, do you have a great day? No one is saying anything.
I did.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. So, which days had a great day? I mean, I did actually. So, well, I hope we all had a great day. So, today we are going to be diving fully into using React, right? And getting the basic stuff. But then in our last class, if we remember the topics we discussed in our last class, we talked about loops. Um, yeah, I'm supposed to be sharing my screen. All right, please indicate if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
No, I cannot.
Judith, can you see it now?
No.
To be your network, maybe log out and log in again.
All right. Okay. So in our last class, we talked about loops, um, using loops and arrays, right? We also discussed the three major array methods, which is the push, the map, and filter. We did the example here. Also did the example with filter. We also did an example with push. Somewhere, yeah, this is it. So we talked about callbacks, not much. There's still more to it, but we just did the basics. And then we did just a little bit um definition by trying to introduce us on what React does and why it is useful to use a library like React. And I also told us to go ahead and install Node. That's yeah, Node. If you haven't, you have to do it to be able to run whatever um, implementations we are going to do today. So still go ahead and install Node. If you're on MacBook, there's a separate way to do it for MacBook. So just use Brave, install it with this command, run this one first, then this one second, and then check the versions. So when you are done installing, if you check the version, note that if you didn't get any response, if you didn't get the version like you dash a particular number, then you might have to try again. Probably the previous command you ran wasn't successful. And
Excuse me, Mr. John.
Okay.
Mr. John.
Yes, I can hear you.
His audio is not very clear. Please, can you help us check that?
How about now?
Here it's clear now. It's clear now.
Sorry about that. All right. Okay. So I was saying you need to have Node.js installed on your system, right? For you to run any library like React, you need the Node.js installed. And if you're on MacBook, there is a different way to do that. That's the installation. Just go to download, then make sure you selected macOS, and then select Brew. Then follow these commands here. So run these commands one by one on your terminal. And then when you're done running, check node that's V. You're going to see the version that's installed. V means version. Also check the npm too. So when you install Node, it automatically installs npm. right? But before we jump into today's class, I promised us something, that I am going to be doing a quick implementation, because it's okay if we just go ahead and learn, yeah, but I think it's best also if in between we try out some practical implements and try to do those stuffs that we have learned so far, right? So if you spare me 15 minutes, we're going to code out this thing along, right? Like code this implementation along, and then probably have a overview of how to approach a design as a creative front-end developer. So to do that, let me create another folder. What's the name of this? Okay, let's just name it foundations. Just name the folder foundation. Foundations. Let's say dive, HTML, CSS, foundation. It's a long name, but it will do. So, I'll just drag and drop, then drag it on my VS Code. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is just to create my HTML file, right? I can call it anything. Let's say index.html. And then your boilerplate, that's the predefined tree for writing your HTML file. You can start with exclamation mark, then enter. It's going to automatically populate all the necessary boilerplate to start HTML. So now let me just put something here and then start my server. All right, so this is my server. A minute. All right, this is my server. So let me just type, let's say Vite, HTML, and CSS foundations. All right, so this is our design. And I did a little bit demo of how to approach a design, right? So if most of the times you're going to be working with a design on Figma. There's a tool we call Figma. That's what designers use to design a particular UI or a template or anything at all. Just design it out. Then they'll give it to the developer, which is you, to code it out, right? So now this is a picture of what we're going to do, right? So let's just assume that this is the design we have at hand. And how do you approach a design like this? First of all, locate your body, right? And most of the times, the available space you have is the body, right? So you can, this particular card is not just the body, right? The body is all this space with this, what I call this color, yellow. Yes. So this is the body. So our body is yellow. And then the content, we only have one content here, which is a card. And this card is now located in the middle of our body. So first thing we're going to do is to give our body the background color, then create a div, probably give that div background white. Obviously, this is background white here. Then try as much as the first thing we're going to do is to, next thing after applying background color is to center that div in the middle, right? So first thing first, the background color, right? So this is my body, and let me create a CSS file. Stars.css. Then the next thing is to link my CSS. Okay. Let me just give this the title foundations. Yeah, HTML CSS foundation. All right. So if you remember, the first thing you must do if you're starting a project is reset all the default paddings and margin that comes with an empty border or an empty HTML, or just yeah, there's, I don't know, we talked about it, right? You can see I've not added any padding and margin, but then there's a space between here and here, this HTML, and then left and top. So we don't need that. We need to create our own. So use the asterisk to select all elements and then reset everything. Margin set to 0, padding set to 0. Then the next thing you need is the box sizing. Set it to border box. This will ensure that our box model is responsive. So just these three things to start as a start. Then if we refresh, okay, what happened? Styles, the CSS. We have linked our styles, the CSS.
Sorry, sir. The style needed an S.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Benchak. All right. Yeah, that fixed it. Okay. So we are good at that end. Now let's give our background color. Let's apply our background color. So there's this extension that I use to get the exact background color, right? So the extension, I don't know the name again. Let me see if I can find the name of this extension. Yeah. So the extension name is Color Pick Eyedropper. You can actually install this extension in Brave browser or Chrome browser. I don't know about any other browsers here. So the name is Color Pick Eyedropper, right? So with this extension, you can just place your mouse on any particular layout and then get that particular color. Now, there's no way for me to tell this color, right? I'm not that good at just telling colors. There's different combinations. There's infinite combinations of colors, right? So, but for me to get this exact shade, I'll use this extension. Just click on it, then I'll hover where I want it to. And then here, so this is the color. The X is F4C4. Yeah, let me just give it a name. Then back in my CSS body, background color. Okay, something is not. Why is it not copying? Okay, I don't know what, but it's not copying. So let me see if I can copy this. No, it's not copying. All right, so F4C F4F hash F4C F4F. Oh, 4 F4C F4F. Yeah, just cancel this up. Oh no, here. Yeah. Okay, I've gotten the color right. Now this is the first step. Then the next thing is let's try and center our div or our container. Let's just call this thing our container, our content. Let's center it in the middle, right? So let me create a div. This div is going to be my wrapper, right? I created a div. I moved my p tag inside there. So how I do all these things is, like you can see that I created this div, and there are some shortcuts that you might need to get that, that will come in handy when you are writing code for fast implementation and all that. So to do this, to move an element up or down, you just click on the alternate, the alt key. I think that's the alternate key. The alt key, if you're on Windows, is the alt key. If you're on MacBook, it is the OPT. That's the opt key. I think that's the option key. So press and hold it, then move your up and down cursor. If I click up, it goes up. If I click down, it goes down. So, but yeah. So let me give this ID, since it is the only thing on the screen. an ID of container. Then I'll go back to my CSS. I'll create a container, open and close it. I'll give it background color of white, and white is FFFF. All right, so save. I think I made another mistake. What's my background color not showing? Oh, I said ID, and here I am selecting class instead of ID. To select ID, use hash. All right. So yeah, this is it. Now I don't want this particular width to take full screen, right? I don't want it to take full screen. So I might just give it a width of, I don't want to give it a defined width because I don't know how like the particular pixels that the width will take. So there are text-based width, right? There are text-based width, things like fit content, right? Fit content means you're telling the width to fit the content of the elements. Everything inside the content, just fit it instead of taking full width. Now, if I save and come back, yeah, you see, instead of taking the full width, it's now fitted inside the content. Like, yeah. Then for us to center this in the middle, let's use flex. All right. So I'm going to give this flex to the body because there's nothing else on the body, right? I just want to center only this div. So I'm going to apply the flex to the body and position this div in the middle. So I can use display flex. Nothing will change, right? But then when I apply justify content center, yeah, it comes to the center, right? But then I don't want it to only align the center on this axis. I want it to come down too, right? Both on the, this is the x-axis, right? The horizontal, the justify content will just align it on the center on the horizontal. But if I want to align it center too on the vertical, I'm going to use align items. So I'm going to use both of them. One is for horizontal, the other one is for vertical. So align items will now be center. Then when I go back, refresh. Okay, what just happened? My content is not aligning to the center. Align item center. Let's inspect. Oh, my body is actually not taking full width. Sorry, full height. You can see where my body ended. My body just ended here. But I want my body to take all the full width, the full height of the screen. So I can give the HTML. Let me remove this height 100% from here. So I want to select both the HTML and the body, and then give them heights of 100%. Exactly. So let me remove this so we can see what was happening before. Comment this out. Now if I select HTML, you can see when I click on HTML from my inspect tool or just over on it, you can see where it was highlighted on this side. When I click, you can see just the height, right? I need that HTML to take full height, then the body to also take full height too. So that's just what I did. HTML and body, full height. So once everything has taken full height, then these flex box properties that I applied will now come in play. Okay, so let me just go back. All right, you can also see how I use the inspect tool to debug, right? I'm having an issue and I just use the inspect tool to figure out where the issue is coming from. So the inspect tool is not only for tracking responsiveness, or there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of things you can do that inspector, and one of it and the most important part of it is that debugging part. So with that, I was able to fix this issue. And then, all right, let's go back to our design. Now we have our container in the middle and then our background color yellow. What's the next thing to do? Let's bring this image, right? Or first, let us give it a padding. Now you can see there's a padding between. We are now in the contents. We are done with the body. We are now in the container. Now the container has a gap between its edge, that's the border, and the content. So let's just apply that padding. Back to our container, we can say padding, just padding. Let's say 10 px, 10 pixels. Back to my HTML, yeah, you can see we have 10 pixels padding, and then the edges are curved, but ours is sharp. You can see theirs is curved. So let's curve ours. And how to do that is using border radius. So let's say border radius to something like 5px. Okay. Well, we can increase it. Let's leave it at 10px. Is this too much? Let me take it back to 8. I think 8 should be fair. Yeah, I can work with 8. All right. Now you can see that the edge is black, right? That's the border is black. Now let's make our own border black too. Border. Then border. First thing is the then second one is the style. Then the third one is the color, and it's black. So 0000 is also black. 0 into 6 places is black. So now when we go back to our implementation, exactly, we now have this. So this is our container is coming together. Let me just zoom out and see. Okay. All right. Now we have done this. Now let's bring this image in. Is there a way we can get this particular assets from them? All right, so I don't have the image, so I might just use, well, let me see, download assets. I have to start the challenge. This section is locked. Okay, what have I done? All right, so I'll just use a random image for now, right? But obviously, when you are designing, you should have the images with you. Like, you can always get the resources and then add them on your code. But for this, I'll just use a random image. I'll just check abstract image. Let me use something close to yellow. With yellow. All right. So I need something. I think I might just pick any image. Also, if you're building a website on your own, probably you don't have any design you're working with. You're just, building up just to try test your knowledge base with development. Yeah, you can always visit Unsplash. So if you need images and assets, you can use Unsplash to. This is a good tool to download images. There is also another place I use to get. There's this one I think is on Draw. Yeah, this one will just give you illustrations too, right? You probably need some illustrations on your website. You can come to OnDraw, then pick any of these illustrations and then use it, right? So any of them. There are other resources out there that you can make use of, right? But it's good to know some offers that will come in handy. All right, sorry, I don't even want to stress myself that much. So I will just copy this image link. I don't want to download it, but you can still go ahead and download it, then reference it from your folder. But I'll just copy the address. So for me to use an image, I need to create an image element. Remember, img for image. An image element is a void element, is a self-closing tag. The first property you need is attribute. The first attribute you need is src, which means source equals to open and close. Then paste my link in there. Okay, this is where it ended. Now let's see what we have. Yeah, it's too much. Let's reduce it a bit. So I can apply my width. I can say 300. Height. Height 300. Let me see. Okay, even the 300 is too big. Let me start this from my CSS. I think I prefer that. But before I even move to CSS, there's one more attribute. Alt equals to, alt means alternate text, anything that can stand as a placeholder when the image is corrupted. Now I can put in anything here. Well, let me just say HTML and CSS foundation. For me to style this image, I think this will be the only image on my. There's no other image. Okay, we have another image here. We have another image, this icon here. So let me just give this image an class of hero img. So I'll just back to my CSS, hero img, open and close. I'll give it a width of 100%. I want it to take the full width of its parent container, but I'm going to specify a height for it. So height, I can say height should be 50 px. And when I come back, yeah, it looks like this, right? I think we can give our container a max width, right? We can give our container a max width. So instead of saying width content fit, I can give it, okay, I can still leave the width content fit, that's the fit content, but then I will now say a max width. I don't want it to get too much. You can say that this is too much, right? Or is it because I'm zoomed out? Or even at that, it's too much. So to do that, I will just say max width. Max width should be, let's say, want to use, let me say 600 px for a max width. 500. Oh, I didn't even write anything. 500. Wait, is this thing even working? Let me say 100. Okay. Yeah, this is fair. Well, let's stop at 400. Why is like this is because I'm very zoomed out. Let me go to 100% and see. Okay. So instead of doing this, I might just increase the height from 50 to 100. So it's going to balance out a little bit. Let me just stop at 75. Okay. So the next thing is this particular text here, learning. So we can have a p tag for it. And the learning came before HTML, CSS foundations, right? So a p tag, p says learning. All right. So I can give this class of, and call it anything, right? But let me call it a label because it looks like a label here, or a tag, like tags to a particular item. But let's use label. So to start this label, I'll go to my CSS dot label, background color. Background color should be this yellow. Now instead of me just doing this, okay, no, don't worry. Yeah, yellow, and then the color is black, obviously. But then you can see that it is like full width, but I don't want it to be full width, so I can make use of that fit content with that width fit content here. So I can say width fit content. Then when I go back, I should have this. Now, but ours has extra padding and margin to it. Sorry, just padding. So I can give it a padding. This first one, I can say 10px. Second one should be 20px. We know the difference, right? The first one is I think this is the vertical. Then the second one is horizontal. First one is top and bottom. Second one is left and right. So let's see. Okay. Pretty too much. So this should be 10. And this should be 5. Okay. Wait. Let me even increase this and see exactly. So this is, let me say this should be 2.5. Okay. Not bad. All right. Then at this point, I will just apply a border radius to make the edges curved. Border radius of 5px. Okay. And I think there is a little bit bold. It's a little bit thick here. So I can actually use font weight to apply thickness to the text. I will say bold. Come back to mine. Well, let me say semi-bold. Bold looks too much. Oh my God. Wait, I'm not sure there's semi-bold here. Bold. Oh, okay. So 700 is bold, 600 is semi-bold, 500 is medium, then 400 is regular. Then anything from 300 down to 100 is 10. But I want semi-bold, and semi-bold is 600. Okay, this is fair. Then the next thing I have is the p tag that says published. P tag published. Published what? 21 December. Okay. I can make the text smaller. This looks so obvious because I am. All right. So let me work with this. Let me make the text smaller. Give this class name of dates, right? Because that's the only thing that has date here. Then back to my date. Font size. To reduce the size, I can say 5px. .10px. Okay. Then I want this to be 10px too. Font size 10px. Three. 7.5. Okay. Right. So each of them should have a margin bottom. This is not the ideal way to put spaces between them, but let's use this first. 20px. Well, stop at 5. Okay. This one should also have margin bottom of 5px. Okay. So then the next thing is exactly our HTML and CSS foundation guy. HTML, CSS foundation. So this, I can give it class of title, right? Okay, what just happened? Title 14px, font weight 600, that's semi-bold, margin bottom 5px. Exactly. Then I want to put margin bottom on the image too. So on the image, margin bottom 5 px. Okay. Then the next thing is this. Okay, well, I might not have the time to write this down, so I'll just say lorem ipsum. I just want to prefill a text, and most of the times you might end up using lorem ipsum. Is a Latin, this is Latin, right? Just a Latin dummy text that just stands in for a particular text, probably not defined, but you just want something to be there till when the particular text you'll be using is available. So but I'll just copy the first line. So I'll give it P, paste the information here, then back to my, okay, now our max width is overdoing. Where is our max width again? Max width 400 px. Reduce it to 200. Okay. So we are going to just stick with 200. So this text is going to be class of description, right? Then to style my description, I'm going to give it a font size. I think it's the same font size with this, so I'll just make it 10 px. Then back, yes. But then if you notice something, you can see that it's a little bit fainter than every other item, every other text here. So we can just give it a background, sorry, text color of white, but then reduce the opacity. So I'll give it, sorry, black. Then select RGB. Just put a little bit opacity to it. I'll say 0.7. Okay. Let me say 0.5. All right. All right, this is fine. Then I think we are missing something. Our image is curved at the edges, and we haven't done it yet. So let's do it real quick for our image. And to do that is border radius. Border radius of 10 px. Too much. 8. I want it to align. There's a way to calculate this. Just whatever radius you gave it, the gap, and then do some. Well, let me just like play around till I get what I need. All right, this is fine. Okay, so the next thing is probably the last part of this, right? Is the name of the person's place, right? So how can we do this? Now, when you look at this, you're going to see that this particular place is, where's my mouse? Oh, okay. So this particular place is, give me a minute, I want to draw a rectangle on there. I don't know if you can see a rectangle on there. So this particular place is 2 items in there, right? You can see that there's image and then there's also a text. And for you to represent these 2 items, you need 2 different elements, right? Probably block elements. So how are we going to align the 2 of them on the same horizontal line? You're also going to use that display flex. There's also another way to do it. You can use an image element and then use an inline element as the name of the person. Inline elements are span, EM, strong and all that, right? But then you'll not get the best result. So for you to get this perfect alignment, you're going to use the flexbox property. So the first thing we need here is div and then an element for the name, but then both of them are wrapped in one div, right? Both of them are wrapped in one div. So to do that, let me clear this. To do that, I'll have a div and I can give this div a class of bio, let's say bio wrapper. something that wraps the bio, the information of the person. Then the first thing I need is the image of the person, right? So we have alt is going to be profile image. So I'll just pick a random profile image. So which should I use? Let me use this. It's generic. Well, I just need. I want to. Okay, let me just use. I think I might just use this. I'll just copy the link, the image address, right? So we'll not download and do all those things. So back, yeah, I'll paste it inside the source. All right. Then when I go back, yeah, that's supposed to happen. So to start this, I will just, there's no even need me giving it any class again. I will just reference this class, then select an image inside this class. But before I go to that step, let me put the last property as the name of the person, John Doe. So I'll now copy this class back in my CSS dot display flex. Then wait, first let me start the, then I'm selecting an image inside the bio wrapper class. So I'll give it a width of 20 px and a height of 20 px. Then when I go back here, I should have this. Okay. Now if you take a look, you can see that our image is shrinked, right? And there's a way to fix that. What are you going to do? Just say background. What is that stuff again? Okay, object fix. Yeah, there is a CSS property called object fit. You mostly be using this on images, right? So I want that particular image to fit inside how I want it to fit inside the container that I gave available to it, or the width and height that I applied. And there are other values. We have contain, we have cover. I think contain is the default. Contain, we just try as much as possible to shrink that image to contain in that width, right? But cover will ignore the width and just make sure that the image is not shrinked, or that the aspect ratio of that image is not changed. So it just fits everything, just spans everything out. But let me just put it out. Let me just put it and see. Yeah, you can see the image is now normal, just the way I copied it from. Yeah, just this way. Then I'll give it a border radius. So to get a perfect border radius, like to make it a perfect circle, right? Because on our design, it's a perfect circle here, right? So to make it a perfect circle, we are going to give the border radius half of the width, and height is going to be the same, making it a perfect square. And to make it a perfect circle, you're going to get half of the width, like whatever value you gave the width and the height, half of it. And I gave the width and height 20 px, and half of 20 is 10. So the border radius will be 10 px. So with this, I'm going to get a perfect circle. You can see it here. So my description doesn't have a margin button. Margin bottom of 5px. Yep. Then remember I gave the container wrapping these two items a flexbox, right? Where is that guy again? Yeah, flex. So to align them in the middle, like if I reduce this text, let me select the text and reduce the size. The text is P, right? Then I'll say font size. Let's say 10px for font size. Yeah, you can see that I've given it 10px, but then the text is moved to the top. So to make it align in the middle, just like this, you're going to use the vertical alignment, which is align items, not justify content. Align items, center. And when you come back, it's center. Now I want to give it a gap. Cancel. then give it a gap of 4, sorry, give it a gap of 5 px. All right, now there is a gap. Now when I just zoom a little bit out, you can see we have, yeah, we have everything all complete. So this is how you approach a design. Now there's something that is off here. The font family, you can see that there is a particular way these fonts are, right? Is you are using the default font family on our own, right? But then there's a way you can add font family. I'm not sure we have even talked about that. So to add fonts, there's a lot of fonts. There's thousands of fonts out there. So I'll just pick any random fonts. And you can get fonts from fonts.google.com, or you can just type on your browser, Google fonts, right? So the first one that comes up, just click on it. That should be Google Fonts, right? So you can pick any fonts that you want. There's a lot of them. So just peruse through, then see the one that fits what you're trying to achieve, or the particular one that is designated for that particular design, right? So sometimes when the designer is done, they are going to give you the resources, both the font name and everything. So you make sure that you're using exactly the same one. So, but for now, I don't know what they use, so I'll just pick any random font that looks okay for me. So I'll just pick the first one, Roboto. So to select, just click on it, and then click on Get Font by the right. Then click on Get Embed Code, right? So with this embed code, you can see how to embed this particular font on your project, right? So, but I don't want to link it. I want to use at import, right? So with this first one, let me zoom in. I don't know if you can see this. With this first one, the link part, I can only use it in HTML. But with this part, the at import part, I can use it in CSS. So I want to use it on my CSS. So I'll click on import. So copy the information they have inside the style elements, then go to the very top of your CSS file before the reset selector. Paste the font there, right? Then go back again. See, this says font family, Roboto slab serif. So just copy this font family and paste it on your body. With this, I think I have successfully injected this font on my code base. Now, when I go back, yeah, you can see that the font now changed, right, to Roboto. So this is Roboto fonts. So yes, this is how to approach a design. I will also be sharing this code with us for those that wants to still go through it. And I would like to keep doing this, just a short implementation before we start the main class. But if it's going to take more than what it did today, I might just find a way and schedule it for another time, right? But still find a way to share the information with us. So no questions, right? Perfect. Let's jump into today's class. Okay, it's not closing. All right. All right, so we talked about frameworks and libraries in the closing part of the last class, right? And we discussed why it is best practice to use libraries when you are coding, right? So if you are developing, let's take, for example, this work that we have done so far, this particular project that we have done. Let me even launch it. Oh, I'm reloading about and there's nothing on about. So I need to go to index.html. You can actually change the route from here and just say /index.html. All right. So this is what we have been able to do so far, right? Not beautiful, quite ugly, but for a start, right? But on a full-blown project, you are going to have multiple pages, right? You're going to have home, about me, project, contact, right? So this particular page is just the home. On about me, you need to have about me too. On projects, you need to have projects too. And each of these pages, you just see yourself repeating some sections of that page. Like this header now, we need this header on the about me page too. So when you're now creating about me, you just copy this header again back to about me. If you have a footer, you copy the footer again on that particular HTML file. So you see yourself just repeating some sections because they are common across all the pages. But to defeat that purpose, that's why that the library React, or in fact every other library is solving this issue. So they are making you build a particular project or app in component basis. So instead of you writing a particular component again and again and again, you just write it just on one file, then reuse it on every other places or every other pages that you might need it. So if I go to about me now, let me create a HTML there, and let me just say about me. Then on my index.html, let me link it there. All right, this is just about. Let me change this from about.html. So if I click on this page, it takes me to here. You can see everything is blank. So which means I still need the header. So you see me going back to the main file, copy the header, come back here, paste the header again. Then if I go back, if I click on about me, okay, the styles is not in about me, that's why. So I need to import the styles again from here to here. Going back, yeah, exactly. So if I go back to, if I click on home, home is supposed to take me to, change this to index.html. All right, home takes me to index.html. Then about me takes me to about me.html. But you notice that I have to copy this header again and the navigations inside about me for me to be able to see it on this file. The same thing happens for every other pages that you're going to be creating. Everything that you need across, you just be writing it again, writing it afresh. And this might make you not to, like, if you want to update now, let's say I want to finally update my header section, right? You see that I have to update it here, go to about me, update it again, go to every other place that I have it, update it one by one. But with library like React, you don't need to like do that. You just create it on a particular file and then just call it, reuse it on every other pages or component that needs that particular function that you have written. So to what is React, right? Again, React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, but I would like to put for building component-based user interfaces. Okay. Now let's set up a React application. So first of all, open your terminal. I don't know why this isn't closing. Wait, can you guys still see my screen?
We can, but your screen is lagging.
It's still lagging for you now. I just saw your comments. You said, is it just me? Your screen is lagging. Okay. Still lagging for you, Eshevik. Eshevik, is it still lagging for you? Okay. All right. So let me create a React application. And to do that, you're going to open the terminal. Let's minimize this. So my screen is frozen for some reason. This isn't closing. All right. So open the terminal. Terminal can also be referred as command prompt, right? So you can get the terminal from, if you're using Windows, just type CMD on your search bar and then click on the command prompts software that opens up that you see there. So there are one or two things that we need to know first. I can't zoom in on terminal, so you might need to zoom in from your screen. There are ways to operate on terminal, right? Now my terminal now is showing the root folder of my system. This is the root folder. It is John's Air. That's John's MacBook Air. That's the root folder of this system. But I don't want to create this particular file inside the root folder. Now, for me to know that this is the root folder, there's how to shake all the items on this folder. What terminal does is, terminal is just like a way to access your system, but now from command. You are now writing commands to access them instead of you coming and create. If you want to create a folder, you just right click on new folder, then create the folder name and every other thing. Yeah, there's another way to do it too, using terminal, right? So from terminal, you can do all those things, create, rename, and then delete too, right? So, and you can list every items inside a particular folder. Now, for me to know if this is my root folder, I will just type ls, right? Ls means list. It's going to list out all the items inside this folder, so I'll know the particular place that I'm on. Now, when I type ls and click on enter, you're going to see this is my root folder because it has the applications, documents, library, music, Postman, desktop, downloads, movies, pictures, and every other thing, right? But this is my desktop by default. So I want to create this particular file inside my desktop. So what am I going to do? I'm going to type cd. Cd means change directory. So whenever you type cd before a particular thing, you are telling the terminal, I want you to change this particular directory that you're currently on to the next directory I'm about to provide, right? And I want this to be on desktop. Now, I'll just type cd, then desktop. Just the name, right? Because I see desktop here, that's why I can navigate inside desktop directly. So cd desktop means change directory to desktop. When I do that and click enter, you can see now I have desktop. You just have to zoom in from your screen to see. You can see I have desktop now showing. It means that I'm now in desktop directly. For me to confirm, you can still bring the ls again, type out the ls. That means list every item inside the directory. So when you type, click, you're going to see everything on your desktop here. I have fonts, I have screenshots, I have Dive Africa. You can see Dive Africa here also, and every other thing. So I'm now on the desktop directory. Now I want to create this file on the desktop directory. So what's the first thing to do? Now this is how to create React. So it's good to, if you're doing something like this, right, going forward, you just go to that particular library, the documentation for that particular library, and read out every process through, right? You not just go and just start doing it because probably you already done it before. You just know what to do. You just start doing it. Things change every day. So how it's being done yesterday might not be how it's going to be done today. So it's good to always reference the documentation. Now to do this, I'm just going to type React.js. All right. So just click on React, then learn React. Then go to installations and documentation. You can read every other thing, right? You can still find time and read every other thing. It's even better to read from documentation because it gives you more detailed definition of what the package is all about. But for me, I will just go to installation and then, yeah, create React app. Remember, I told us that there are ways you can create a React app currently, right? There are actually many ways you can create a React app. There is popular 3. That's the basic create React app. We also have the Vite, creating with Vite. We have another package called Vite. Just type Vite.js, right, on your browser. Then you're going to see Vite Frontend 2. Some people call it Vite, some call it Vite. Okay, anyone works. It's just Vite. So Vite is also a framework built on top of React, right? So you can create a React app using Next.js too. Just type Next.js, then enter. So this is also Next.js. Just click on get started. Then you can just go to installations, then follow the steps. So all these options, the other ones, right? But these few here, it just entirely depends on what the project requirement is, right? So you're going to first understand what this project requires. Then you now choose, okay, how do I go about creating my React app? Should I use Vite? Should I use Next.js? Or should I use the basic Create React app? But one thing that you need to know that is that the basic Create React app, that's the CRA, we call it CRA, that's Create React app, is currently deprecated. I think I mentioned this in our last class. So even the React documentation, we recommend that you go ahead and use any other framework like Vite, Next.js, or any other one to create the React app. Okay, so these libraries, they do different things, but the one that is closer to just the basic is the Vite. So we're going to use Vite for this class. So you can follow how to create. You can see what they did here. They even showed the one for Next.js, but you're not creating for Next.js. We are creating for Vite. So I'll just go to Vite. Just go to the Vite documentation. Click on Get Started. You can read every other thing if you want to. It is advisable that you still go through and check it out. But I think this is also where they have the setup. Okay. All right, just come to this part, scaffolding your first Vite project. Compatibility notes. Vite requires, zoom in, let me see. You can check documentation from your end. Vite requires Node.js version 18 plus or 20 plus. However, some templates require a higher Node.js version to work. Please upgrade if your package manager warns about it. So at this point, you should have Node.js installed, right? And to know if Node.js is installed in your system, go to your terminal, type Node, then space -v. When you type that, you're going to see the version of the node that is currently installed on your system. Okay. Also check npm. Npm comes with Node. So if you're installing Node, it also exposes you to use npm. It also installs npm too for you. So type npm-v. You're also going to see a version of npm on your system. So it's advisable that currently you should have Node version 20 or above. Okay. So if you are successful in this part, then you're good to go. Then the next thing is to create the Vite app. There are other ways you can create a Vite app, right? You can see you can use npm, you can use yarn, you can use pnpm, you can use bond. All these things are just compilers and they just bundlers, right? So you can use anyone you want, right? But before you even use anyone, you need to go to the documentation and install it on your system. But for now, Node or npm comes with Node, right? So I'll just use the npm. Just copy this command here. Npm create Vite at latest. Then go back to your terminal, then paste that command. So why is it at latest? Latest is just going to make sure that the Vite you're currently trying to set up is on the latest version, right? You can actually remove the at latest and still install, but it's good to use it so that at the points when you're creating that particular application, it's going to use the currently stable version. Now, if I type this thing out and click on enter, it's going to run some commands. It's going to ask me, need to install the following packages, create Vite app. Okay, to proceed. Just type Y. Y means yes, I want to proceed. Type Y and then click on enter. Then it's creating nps create Vite. Now, asking me for the project name, okay? So this project name can be anything entirely. It just depends on what you're creating. So mine, I can call mine dive React app. Okay, dive React app. So enter. Now it's not asking me select a framework. Now the good thing about Vite is you can use any framework. There's a lot of frameworks that you can use with Vite or Vite, right? But in our own case, we are just doing React, so we are going to select React. But it's also good to know other ones. So we have vanilla, that's the vanilla JavaScript, right? The basic JavaScript that you know. We have Vue. Vue is a library, or it's a framework actually. It's a JavaScript framework. We have React, which is the one we are going to use. But let's check other ones. We have Preact, P with React. We have Leads, we have Svelte, Solid, Quick, Angular, others. There are just many more. But we're using React, so just make sure the checkbox is on React. And to move this, just use the key, up and down key, to move up or down. All right. So when you get to React, just click Enter. Then it's going to tell me to select a variant. That's the next stage. Variant is probably the particular language you want the project to be based on. Now we have TypeScript. We also have TypeScript plus SWC. We have JavaScript and JavaScript plus SWC. We have React Router. But what we have done so far is JavaScript, right? I think I mentioned TypeScript sometime. And TypeScript is just like a superset of JavaScript. It is more typed, right? It's still JavaScript. When you're doing TypeScript, you're still going to be, if you know JavaScript, you don't have to worry about TypeScript, just to learn one or two things about how to type a particular function or variable, anything, right? How to write it, it's convention, but it's still basic. What is it called? The declarations, how to declare constant, this equals to that, still the same thing, and every other operations you're running on JavaScript, still the same thing on type. But it is more advanced when you're writing coding a project that is very, very large. So it's good to use TypeScript. But for a start, we're going to choose JavaScript. So go to JavaScript, then enter. So that's all. Now you can see it has created our app here. If you look at desktop, you're going to see Dive React app. Okay. But first, before we even go to this, you can see what is said here. CD Dive React app. These are the instructions. This is where it said done. Now run CD Dive React app. That's enter the Dive React app directory. Then the next thing is install. npm install. npm install means just to install all the necessary packages this Vite app needs to run. Okay. Then we also have npm run dev. npm run dev is to finally start the app. You know, earlier we have been using go live from VS Code. Okay, like that's open from live server to start our project. But in this scenario, you don't need it anymore. You just need to run this command on your terminal to start up the project. Okay. Now there are separate ways you can run this command. You can either continue running this command here or run the command inside the app, the directory itself. But to do that, you're going to first of all open the directory from on VS Code. Okay. So this is Dive React app, right? That's the app we just created. This is it on VS Code. So you can either run any of this here. If you want to continue running it here, no problem. But if you want to run it on your VS Code, open the terminal from your VS Code. Remember how to open terminal. When you click on VS Code, look up, you're going to see terminal, right? Click on terminal, then select new terminal. Okay. You have opened the terminal for VS Code. It's still the same thing as the terminal that we have outside here, but the difference is this one is just dedicated to our app. You can see that by default, the app is already selected. The other ways to open your terminal, you can open from here or this one in the middle here, the second to the last. Just click on it. It's going to open the terminal for you. All right. So now we don't need to CD again. We don't need to CD inside Dive Reactor because we're already there, right? Why you just show the CD is because you're not there yet. So the next command to run is npm install. npm install. This will install all the packages that you need, right? So when I type it out and enter, it's going to install necessary package. Just give it like a minute or two or less, actually. Everything should be installed. At times it might take slower because of network, so it is dependent on the network and other. But I don't know why this is taking longer. But let's still give it a minute. Okay, I think the network is slow. Shouldn't take more than, shouldn't have taken longer than this. All right, it is done. You can see it says added 149 packages and audited this and that, right? So yeah, it is done, right? And now to start it up, to start our project, where's our panel again? To start our project, it says npm run dev. So go back to your terminal, type in npm run dev, okay? Then enter. It's going to start up the server for you. Now you can see what started. It told you that Vite version D is ready, right? Then look out. This is the link you need to access to see the project, okay? And for you to see what you have done, you just have to click on this link or just open this link on your browser. The HTTP localhost colon 5.73. So if I open this up, yeah, so this is now my Vite app. You can see it says Vite plus React, okay? So our app is running. So if you go to this stage, it means you have passed every other stages, right? So the next thing is making changes on your project, right? So let's say making these changes. This is just the boilerplate they have by default to tell you that, okay, the app is actually running successfully and it is a combination of Vite and React, right, that you're running. So if you notice something, when we did this npm install or before we did it, there was no node modules here before, right? But after installing, we now see node modules. This node modules contains all the packages that your application needs to run. All right. Without these node modules, your application will not run, and you are not needed to make any changes on this folder at all. Just leave it as it is. This folder is managed by the commands that you run, the installing and adding. Like if you're adding a package or removing a package, everything will be registered on the node modules. So just leave the node modules and yeah, that's it for node modules. It just contains all the modules or all the packages on your project. Then the public folder is mostly going to contain your assets, right? PDF and everything, right? So if you have images and if you have images and every other assets, right, you can add them to your public folder, right? Then we have the SRC. SRC obviously means source, okay? So this is where all your applications, all the implementations and everything is. That's inside your source, right? So all this information that we have here, the Vite plus React, this, that, is inside the source folder, right? But we'll get back to it. Let's talk about every other file we have. So we have git ignore. This is for Git and GitHub, right? So sometimes when you are pushing to GitHub, node modules is a very, very large file, right? Because it contains a lot of packages, right? And you cannot just push it to GitHub. So for you to, when you're pushing to GitHub and you don't want to push a particular file or node modules, you can specify it from your git ignore. Then when you're now pushing to Git we ignore that particular file that is specified inside here. It just does what the name says, git ignore. Then The next one is the ESLint. This ESLint is for just formatting your files. ESLint and Prettier. If you remember when we were starting, I told us to go and install 2 extensions from our extensions panel, right? And we did Prettier and ESLint. So this ESLint is just used to configure a particular rules for your project. For linting rules like formatting and every other thing. Then the index.html, this is the root. Let me close out this terminal. Don't delete this terminal. If I close out this terminal, it's still going to be running in the hood. But when you kill it, this particular dustbin icon here, this bin icon means kill. It means you are terminating every action that you're running. But this will just close it, and everything you're running will just still be running in the hood. It just hides the panel. If I open it back, you can see that my server is still running. I'll just close it here. Now, this HTML is the root HTML for our project. Everything we are writing inside the source is going to be injected inside this HTML file. React is like its SPA. We call it SPA, single page application, right? Everything is just being injected on one HTML file. And this is the HTML file here. Okay, so you now have other assets and packages to manage every other things that you need to do, right? So every other features that you need to do, like routing. That routing is moving from one page to another, and every other complex implementation. So you just have to install a package that does that. So everything is just being injected in this file, and you can see we have the title, which is Vite plus React. That's what we have here. But we can give this title the name of what we're doing. You can say Dive React app. Yeah, you can see it changed here. And then you have the roots, ID roots. Don't touch anything in this part apart from the title, okay? Just to change the title, but roots, leave the root as it is, leave the ID as it is. This root is where the DOM is targeting to inject all your applications or all your implementation in. Then we have the script, src main.jsx. Now, I believe I talked about JSS in the last class or sometime, right? JSS is just like a JavaScript, but with an extended HTML capabilities or properties. With JSS, we can write HTML inside of JavaScript. Okay, X there means XML. That's extensible markup language, right? It means you can now move a particular HTML element outside of HTML and write it in JavaScript. And for that to be possible, that's where we have the JSS. So I will still come back to this this script file here. So these are index.html. Then the package log.json is just what the node modules use to store its packages. So don't touch this file either. The package.json, also, you will not be touching this file. You will just be adding or removing stuffs in it from your command or from the terminal, like adding packages and removing packages. So this package.json, there's a difference. Package log.json is just some extra data needed for a particular package, right? So you're just going to register everything on this package log. And then your node modules will also use it too when it's running your app. But the one that shows the exact package that you installed is the package.json. Here you're going to see all the packages that you have. And it starts with the name of the project, Dive React app, private, true. Version is just, we can change the version if you want. Like when you're releasing your project, probably this is version 0.1 or version 1. This. You can change it from here. Type module, then the script. This is just the script you're going to run on your terminals. The run dev is the one that starts the Vite app. Build is building the app so that you can deploy it or view it from HTML file. Then the length is ESLint. Yeah, you can actually go ahead and customize your script object, just depending on what you want to achieve with it, right? But you're going to be careful with it. So that's for the script. Then the dependencies is what our application is dependent on. Now, this application is dependent on React and React DOM. You can have multiple dependencies, but for a start, It's just two, React and React DOM. Now this React DOM, I'll get back to it. I'll get back to this. Then we have dev dependencies. Dev dependencies it means development dependencies. That's the dev there. So these development dependencies, they are dependencies that you are only going to use or is only going to be accessible to you as a developer when you are still coding it, when you're still developing it. But when you are now pushing this project to deploy it, or you want to deploy it, or want to share the link to, or just publish the project, right? The system, you don't even need to do anything, don't worry. But when you're publishing it, Node will automatically exclude all these packages, right? Because it's not going to be used on the production when it has been published. These packages are just available to you during development. So it's just the packages that you're going to use for, you can see the example there is ESLint, okay, and every other thing. You can have multiple dev packages. Then the next one is README. This is just going to serve as an information about the project, right? It's more like a documentation about the project, how to start it, what to do, the configurations to do, and when to do it. Probably some things that are only accessible for locals. You can make mention of them here. It's just like a text. You can write anything you want. It's a text file. And to see this README in action, when you push your code to GitHub, let me open my GitHub. When you now push your code to GitHub, okay, let's say question board. Just load up, please. All right, so you can see this is where the README shows. So some people, when they visit your repository, for them to understand what you really did, or how to set it up, or how to go about what your project is all about, yeah, they have to like install and then look through everything. But then with this README part, you can see everything is showing here. With this README part, they will just have a glance of, okay, this is what this project is all about. This is how to set it up, and this is how to do every other configurations on there. So yeah, it's going to come in handy and definitely help you more on documentation and how you approach a particular project and every other thing. It's going to help you with that. So it's good to have that skill earlier on. Okay, so I said I'm going to come back to React DOM. Now I told us what DOM is, right? And DOM means Document Object Model. Now what is React DOM? I'm going to read this out from you. React DOM packages provides DOM-specific methods that can be used at top level of your app and as an escape hash to get outside the React model if you need to. So the DOM, sorry, I just read, it's not even, I'm looking for a better definition. So, but React DOM is just mostly serving as what is going to compile all the, it's not just React that is doing it, right? So React needs an extra layer to bundle all your app and then inject them on the HTML. And that's what React DOM is doing. Now, if you go back to index.html, you're going to see that the source of the script or everything we are writing is going to be from src main.jsx. So now let's go to src main.jsx. So open src, then locate main.jsx, right? So this is main.jsx. Now you can see our React DOM in play. This create root was imported from React DOM. So React DOM is just what is going to be responsible for creating this element and bundling it as a one. Then now even serving it to you locally so that you can see what you're doing, right? Now you can see what they did here. This is the only place you're going to be using document.get element by ID. Every other place, you just have access to that particular element directly for that particular node. So they just did document.get element that by ID roots. And where is the roots? Is on the index.html with ID root. Then it is now rendering a strict mode. These are just some other packages from React. Then our app. So this is where it's rendering our app. Don't worry about this thing. You'll still get a hang of it or how it operates. Now, if we go to app, where is app? App is in the same folder, app.jsx, right? Now go to app.jss. Now you can see this is where we now have our implementation. All these things here is what is here, right? You can see Vite plus React. See it here. Vite plus React is written on H1. So if I remove everything here, let me just say div, the popular element, div as div Africa. Wait, even if I don't put anything, if I save it as so, come back, you can see everything is now cleared, right? Then bring back my div Africa React app. Then come back, you're going to see it here, div Africa React app. Okay. I'll still tell us why the background color is black and why the text is centered in the middle. So yeah, this is what is happening here. So most parts, you're not going to be touching this main.js. The installation and setup has done it for you already. You just need to focus on app.js. This is where you're going to be writing every other thing you want to inject on your code, right? So this main.js is directly tied to the index.html. You can see it here, src main.js. All right, so that's the connection between the HTML and the main.js, and I believe that explains what the React DOM is already. So just assume what DOM is, document object model. Then the React DOM is just creating its own DOM. I told us about visual DOM, right? Visual DOM and real DOM. Real DOM is the one we already know. The HTML, this body, head, body, and the visual DOM is also like the real DOM, but it's like a memorized real DOM. It stores all the values, everything in memory. Only changes the particular node or the particular element that is being modified. So when you're using real DOM, if anything changes, it renders all the DOM. Everything, it renders everything. So that, you change something, HTML will just react immediately. So it's going to update the particular thing that is changed. And for it to do that, it's going to refresh, re-render everything so that it's going to now render with the new value. But with React DOM and with a library like React, it's not going to render all the value again. And because it's rendering again, it's going to cost a download or some space for the user, right? Just kilobytes, but when it gets multiple times, it becomes heavy. So that's what React does. It just targets that particular node or element that was changed and modify it, or just render it, re-render it again without affecting every other nodes or element that you have on the project. So let me clear everything out, right? Now, if you notice something, you're going to see something different from what we had earlier. So you can see we have import. Let me go to main.js here. You can see we have import, the name from so and so place, right? So this is how to use a particular component that is not in the same file. Probably the component is another file or folder. You can make reference to it using this import keyword, right? So you're just going to type import, the name of what you're importing. In this case, we're importing app, right? So we call it app from. Where is that particular app from? You now make reference to it in a string. Dots slash, I told us about dots, right? Dots means you're referencing that same place, just one dot, you're referencing that same folder. And app.jsx is in the same folder as the main.jsx. So you just import it, dot slash, the name of what you're importing. They now call it here as a JSX or as an element, a void element actually. So yeah, you are going to be using this import from a lot, right? Because obviously we are trying to build a component-based application. So you're going to create different components and then you now be importing it on a particular element or file that needs it. So that is this import. And even if you install packages, you're still going to import them. Sorry. So now we have our app, right? And inside our app, we have a div. Remember, this is just a function, okay? we have an app, and inside app we have a div, and this div is returning. You must return something, and you are going to return an element, right? And the div is the element, the particular this file is returning this particular JSX. It is not HTML. It is JSX, just like HTML written inside JavaScript. And then yeah, just type. Let me just give it H1. And then copy my, then click on save to format. Now, if you notice, whenever I click on save, it just formats everything. There's a way you can actually do it, right? If you have Prettier installed, then just skip this step. But if you don't, still go ahead, install Prettier. Prettier, this one with verified bash. Install it. I'm already installed mine, so just show me on install. When you have done this, go to file. Is it file? Or go to, yeah, go click on the, I think from Windows, you're going to go to file. But from MacBook, just click on the VS Code icon or the code icon. Then you're going to see settings. Over on settings, you're going to see another settings again, right? Click on it. Then it's going to open this panel. So here, search format on save. You're going to see the first thing that comes up, editor, format on save, format a file on save. All right. So whenever you save, it's going to format the file. And because I have
Sorry,
Prettier,
sorry, take the step again. I didn't get that.
all right. So click on code. It's actually different from MacBook and Windows. I don't know the OS you're using, but for mine, to locate settings, click on code. Then you're going to see settings. Then hover on this setting. You're going to see other settings. It's going to show another panel, right? Then click on it. It's going to open this panel. If you're on Windows, I think you have to click on File, then look for settings. Then hover on it or click on it. I've forgotten the process for Windows. Then just once you click on the settings, it's going to show, open up this panel for you. Then from this panel, you're going to see a search bar here. Type in format on save. Format on save. The first option that comes up, that's the one we are targeting, right? And it just says editor format on save. If it is not checked, check it. Like make sure that this checkbox is checked. If it's empty like this, click on it to show this tick. So check it. Once you have checked it, don't worry, just you have done, you have enabled it. So what this does is going to listen to any formatting tool that you have. And Prettier is a formatting tool, is a formatting extension, right? And it's going to, whenever you save, it's going to use that formatting tool that you install to save your file. And because of that, that's why whenever I save, Control S, it just formats my file for me. Now you can see that my div is here. Let me just scatter this again. My div is here, my H1 is here. Now instead of me just clicking on it one by one to indent it, I'll just click on, I'll just save, Control S, it formats it for me because I have this option checked. All right, so that's just, yeah, that's just it for this. So now when I go back to my application, I'm going to see Dive Africa. So first, let me reset everything. I've reset the JSS. Let me reset the styling too. And to locate the styling, go back to your Explorer. Inside SRC, you're going to see index.css. You can see all these things here. I don't need it, right? I need to start my own. This, what they have here is just to display that message that we saw earlier, the one that said Vite plus React, but we don't need it anymore. I'll just delete everything, save. Then back to, also the same thing on my app.css, right? Copy everything there and delete. Now you can see that my index.css is being used somewhere. It's being imported here. You can see it here. If not, it's not going to, that styling that was here before is not going to show, right? You can see that everything has reset back to default. But ideally, if you are coding, you want to have all your CSS in the same folder. But for now, we'll just leave it like this. So back in my app.tsx, I have Dive Africa React app. Okay. I think I need to reset this file because there's supposed to be no padding by default. Remember how to reset. Do it on your root CSS. That's the index.css. Universal selector. That's asterisk. Padding 0. Margin 0. Then box sizing. Set it to border box. That's all. If we go back, yeah, everything is now reset. It's now reset. Yeah. That's wrong. All right. Okay, so yeah, this is just how to create a basic. This is just a small application that we did, right? And there is another way you can create a component, right? You can either create a component as a function-based component or a class-based component. So most of the time, you're going to be writing function. I mean, class is also applicable, but class is only going to come in handy probably if you are maintaining a very old or a legacy code base, right? Code base that was written when class-based components was still a thing, right? But going forward, functional components, function-based components, it's better because it is more easier to use and it's also more concise, right? So this example that we have here is a function-based component. And this is how to write a component in React. You start with function, right? This, if you want, you remember we have two ways to write a function, right? You can either write it this way or you can write it this way, const app equals to code braces, then your arrow function. This is arrow function. We did it when we were talking about function. So it's either you write it this way, and after writing this, you now have return here. Let me just copy this return. So it's either you have it this way or this way, right? It's still a function-based component, right? Let me just comment this one out because we can't have two files with the same name. So this is how to write your function. It's either you write it this way or this way, and you're going to return the element or what you want to render for that screen. Okay? This is what we want to render. Remove this div. This is what we want to render. Then after doing this, you now go ahead at the end, you do export default app. With this export default, you're now saying, I want any person or any project or any, sorry, not project, or any other file that wants to use this app should go ahead and import it. If I didn't specify this export here, in fact, if I commented out this export default app, when I go back to main.js, it's going to cry. I mean, even if I go back, it's going to throw an error. Go to console. I don't know why it's not crying. Here you can see the request module src does not provide an export name default, right? So I need to export it from this app. After I've created the component, I need to export it so that every other component can use it. And how to do that is export default, then the name of the component. If I called it header, yeah, I'm going to call it header here. So when I go back, refresh, yeah, you can see it is now fixed. So this is how to write your components, okay? And it must be in Pascal case. Remember when we talked about case, we talked about camel case, Pascal casing. Let me say Pascal casing. We talked about camel case, kebab case, snake case, and then Pascal case, right? So Pascal case is going to start with capital letter. You must start your components with capital letter. or write it as a Pascal casing, right? For you to reuse it, or for React to actually recognize that this particular component is returning a JSX. So else you might get error when you are building a very large application. You just start seeing errors because you didn't give it you didn't name it in Pascal casing convention. So that is the convention of how to create a component, just like this. So I can actually remove this one. No, let me just leave this. Probably the next one I create. Now let me create another component. Okay. Now I want this component to probably be anything, right? So I'll create a new component inside the SRC. Every component you're creating must be inside the SRC folder. So right click, new file. I want this component to be message.tsx. Sorry, JSX. JSX. So enter. Now, why am I calling it JSX? There are some times when you're going to write only JS, right? There are some times when you're going to write JSX. So when you write only JS, when you write only JS, it means you're just going to write a basic JavaScript expressions. You're not returning any HTML, so you're not returning any node. But when you want to return a node, when I mean node, I mean elements, right? You want to create a component that does other things, but at the end, it returns a node to the user, right? You must use JSX as the extension. So you're going to create the name of the component, then end it with JSX. Now, instead of JSX, I will create my component. Remember the convention, constant. What will I call this? Capital M, message, then equals to, I'm using arrow function for this. Open and close curly braces. Then here I'm going to return H2. I'll open and close this element. H2, and this H2 says hello world. All right. Now, after doing this, remember the final thing to do, you export it. So you now say export default message. Export default message. Now my message says hello world. If I come back, will I see hello world? No, I won't. Why? Because I have not imported this particular hello world on the root application, right? And the root app is this. This is the one we need to modify. We cannot modify the main.js, right? This is the app.js we need to modify. Now, for me to see my hello world or my message, right, I need to import it in this page, because this is the page that is showing the Dive Africa React app. Now, how do you import? At the very beginning, you type import. Then what are you importing? Name of that file, message. Just type it out. Where are you importing it from? Where are you importing it from? Like this. Then open and close a string. /message. You can end it with JSX. You can end it with .jsx if you want. But if you're using Next, you might not need .jsx. In fact, you can still import it like this, because message is the only file named message in this file. So whenever I just type message without typing .jsx, it's going to look for that file that has the name message and then import it. Now, how can I use this message, or how can I declare it or render it? Because now it's not showing. I need to show that message. I can just create a. Now, there's something I want to talk about. I can just say message. Message. Why is this thing giving me an error? Why? Because in a particular component, in every component, you are going to return only one node, right? You cannot return two nodes or two elements, because each particular component is creating a new element, right? So it cannot just create this particular expression here with this h1, only h1. This one with just h1 also means the same thing as if you remember how we did that document.create elements. Document.create elements, then string h1. I don't know if you remember when we did this, right? Open and close. When we created an element, when we're doing JavaScript. So this is what this particular file is doing, right? It is by in the hood creating element per component, is creating an element per component, right? So we cannot have h1 and then have another element beside it, right? This no, you have to create only one element per declaration. And so that's what this particular expression is. That's what this particular line is doing. And we cannot just come and have another element. Let's say I want another element p beside it. I'll just tell you this p is message or anything. It's going to give me an error. Even if I save and go back, I'm going to get this error. Adjacent JSS elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. Do you want a JSX fragment? Now this leads us to fragment. Fragment is used to wrap a particular element, right? So instead of having multiple, you just wrap everything in a fragment. So you can import fragments from React. You can import fragment, just open and close a curly braces, then end it with React, okay? Now inside here, I can see many things that I can import. There's a lot of things you can import. There's children, just a lot of things that you can do with just importing the React element. But we just need a fragment, so you can type out fragment. Okay, so instead of doing this, I'm going to wrap these two elements in a fragment. Okay, how am I going to do that? Fragment is going to be it's going to be an element, right? So you're going to type it out, fragment, open it, then close it, then your h1 a message, cut it out, then paste it inside fragment and save. Okay, so this is how to write an element that probably you need to wrap it, but you don't know what else to use to wrap it. You just go ahead and use the React fragment. So you can either do it this way, or just go ahead and let me comment out this one. Duplicate it and comment out this. You can either import or just say div. I mean, it's not a biggie, right? And just say div, right? Just wrap the two in a div. But you cannot have another element after div, else you're going to get an error. If I create another element after div, I'm going to get an error. So every other thing that I want is going to be inside of this div. If I want to create another element, it's going to be inside div. That's how you write every component. You can also do it this way, or there's just several ways to wrap your project or wrap a component. You can also use empty, just your normal open and close elements, right? But then it's going to be empty. This is also a fragment. So you can write React fragments in this way or this way. But this way you have to import it from React. This way you don't have to import anything. Okay, so it's either this way, or this way. And it's not even you're going to use div. You can use any element you want. You can use section. We have header, we have footer, we have aside, we have a lot of elements out there, right? We talked about them, and you can, if you don't want to use any element, you can just go ahead and wrap it in an empty fragment. It still works. React will not cry about it. So yeah, this is how to return your components, or how to use the React fragment. But okay, let me make this one the empty one. This should have div. But I have a message that I want to show to the user. So how do I now import this message? So you write out that particular component that you imported as an element message, open and close, right? You can have it to be an open and close element. Now, when I go back to my browser, I will see hello world. This hello world is the message that I wrote inside this component. Hello world, right? So because of that, that's why, because I imported it here, and I rendered it like this, just the way to render a component as an element, and I have it here. So you can render it this way. It's also a self-closing tag, right? You can say message like this too. Anyone works. It still works, right? You can open and close it or just render the message, right? Nothing. Yeah, anyone you want is fine. But with this particular one, the one that have open and close, it gives you a room to pass or write element inside of it. But we'll get to talk about how to use that too. So I can also do conditional rendering here. In my message, probably I want to say hello world. But if there is name, let me create a constant. I'll create a constant that says full name equals to John Doe, right? And I will now say if, remember how to write the conditional statement. If full name, that's if there's something in full name, return H1. No, let me say H2. Return H2, hello. Hello. Now this is how to write variables, how to consume variables. You're just going to open and close your curly braces, then write name of the variable, full name. You can see use template literal here, right? You can still go ahead and use template literal, but you're just going to write it in this. No. There are cases where you're going to use template literal. It's still applicable. But when it is inside an element, you don't need to use $sign anymore or wrap it in a string. You're just going to open and close a curly braces and then pass the name of the full name. Now, when I go back, it is going to return hello John Doe instead of hello world. Why? Because there is something. I'm checking if full name is this. Like if there's a value inside full name, render hello the full name. When I now go back, I'm going to see hello John Doe. But if there's nothing in full name, let me say full name is empty. Save. Now it's going to check, is there something in full name? No, like is full name truthy? That's if something exists in it. If there's nothing, it's going to now go ahead and return hello world. Now when I go back, I'm going to see hello world. So you can still do your conditional statement this way. I mean, just the basic things we learned in React, you can apply it in the basic things we learned in JavaScript, you can apply it here tenfold. So yeah, that is how to write conditional statement. There are complex ways, but yeah, this is one of them. Any question? No question. So all right, let me do one more thing before we call it a day. So I want to create.
I have a question.
Okay. All right.
When this app.css and the index.css, which is the main one?
The main one is index.css because that's the one that is imported on the main main.jsx. That's the main file. But this app.css, you can create a particular CSS for a particular component. So the intention behind this app.css is to style the elements inside app.jsx. So earlier it was imported here. So it's like this: import /app.css, right? So it means all these CSS I'm writing in this app.css is just for this app. I can still go ahead and create message.css, but then I'll now import it inside message. But the main one that handles our reset, the root CSS is the index.css or whichever CSS that was imported inside the main file.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So, all right. Okay. So, someone raise up his hand. Yes, Israel.
Yeah, well done, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I can see that the in our HTML class, those things that we're using, like the PL paragraph elements, the heading elements, we are now making use of them here on that the CSS.
Sorry, you said CSS.
Yeah, yes. In the when you were teaching us HTML and the elements, we made use of paragraphs, headings, and all those things. But now I can see that we make use of them in this React under CSS.
Under CSS. Oh,
Yeah, inside
CSS.
CSS. Like the
No, CSS.
app.css.
No, there's the app.css is actually empty. If I let me delete it, it's not even being used. So everything you're still writing, your CSS still stands for, it still represents your styling for everything. Nothing changes, right? Just that all those things, you're not writing it inside a component, app.jsx. Okay, you mean to say JSX or CSS?
JSS, sorry.
Oh, JSX, yeah, exactly, you're correct. So I'm now writing all those things inside my JSX. So whichever
Okay,
component I created .jss, I'll now write my elements there.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, there are complex ways to use components.
Does it mean that we can either use the index.html to write our to input, or we
to write
is preferable to use the JSS?
It's not like preferable, it is a necessity you use the JSX, because now you're now using a library and everything is being injected on this index.html. The only thing you are allowed to change in this index.html is the information on the header, the title, the meta tags, if you want to increase the SEO optimization or do some SEO implementations, right? But anything inside the body, leave it as it is, right? The function here, this particular stuff here on the main.jss, it is getting document.getElement by ID roots, right? It is going to the HTML, getting this particular element and injecting everything inside your app inside of it. So you don't need to go ahead and modify it again. Everything I am not creating is going to be a JSS file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right. So one more thing before we call it a day. Let's do. I have my message, right? So let me create another component that is going to probably list. I want to call this component list dot JSX. Why? Because I want to return a node. List.jss. So inside my list.jss, now there is a way that I normally use to create my React app. So instead of writing everything one by one, there is a shortcut that VS Code made available for us to automatically create a React app. And that shortcut is RA. There's a lot of other options under RA. There is RAC, there's RAFCE, there's RAFCP. I think I forgot. Yeah, this with P includes prop types. So if you type in RAFC, just FC, and click on enter, it's just going to create a self-export component. But that's not what we need. We need a component that exports by default. So to get that, it is RAFCE. RA means React app, then FC means functional components, then E means export. That exports properties that comes to that export default, right? So that's the meaning of RAFCE. React app functional components with export. When I click on enter, you see it automatically preloads that boilerplate for me and even giving it the name. Remember, I gave it list here. It's even going to give the component list, export list, and also just put a list content for me, right? I'll now edit from there. So if this component was any other thing, if it was message, it's going to create, give it message, put message here, and then export message too. So if you don't want to go through the steps of writing it out every time, you can use RAFCA. All right. So I want this list to contain, I just want it to be my basic list, right? UL. Remember how to write the list elements. First, you have the UL, which means another list. Then you have your LI inside of it. LI, open and close. So let me just type it out. Enter. Yeah. Then one. Let me save. Then, of course, I won't see it. Why? Because I've not imported it inside my app.jsx. So I can now go and import it first. Import, what's the name? List from, open and close, /list, exactly. So after doing this import, we remove this app.css here. We don't need it anymore. After doing this import, you now go here and render it, like include it on the DOM. Open and close your tag. It's a self-closing tag, so you can write it like this. It's going to work. Now when I go back, I'm going to see my lists item here. So I can now have other list items, right? I can have another LI, that's list item, item 2. Sorry. LI, item 3, and just one more item, item 4. Item 4, right? Then when I go back, I'm going to see these 3 items. I'm not sure I'm zoomed in well. Okay, I'm going to see these 3 items. So probably I may not need this dive React app again. So Alex. Alex, you raise your hand. Okay, so item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. Just a minute or more, I'll be done. So there is an advantage that React presents, right? Now, if I want to, probably I don't know how many items are in this list, right? And then I want to add more items to it. You remember what we did that time, right? I have to go ahead and do document.create element, inject a inner HTML inside the element, and also go ahead and append it to the parents. Like I have to do it every time. But with React, I don't need to access the elements. I have the elements already. I'm inside the elements, so I can easily manipulate it. So I can have an array, let's say a constant of names. Let me say this is names actually, equals to, let me use this option. So I have an array of names, right? And this array of names contains John, Jane, Bob, and Alice, right? So how can I now represent this array inside this list? Now, if I want to do this, remember the map method. I told us that the map method is just going to create a new array with the information that I want to be in it, right? When we did map, we did whatever the array is dot map, then get the item and then the index and then return whatever I want to return by the end. Now to write map in this case, remember how to access variables. Open and close a curly braces. What do we want to access? Names. So we're going to write what? Names. Now because names is an array, we can do dot map. You can see dot map here. Do dot map, open and close your curly braces. Now remember the map method accepts a function, and we're going to use an arrow function. So how do you write arrow function? So inside this curly braces, write an arrow function. Open and close another curly braces again, then your arrow, and then open and close a curly braces, because we want to return. I mean, there's another way to write this, I'll show us. So inside this, from here is a function that gives us two arguments. The first argument is the item. The second argument is the index. Now, inside my curly braces, I will return. You're going to be using return a lot. I will return. What am I returning? This particular li element. Then save. So probably I don't need these ones anymore. I'll delete this. So I now have item 1 mapping names, mapping item 1, right? Now, when I now go back, I'm going to see item 1 into 4 places. Why? Because names is 4 and I'm mapping just item 1, right? So it's going to map item 1s into 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 places, right? And there is, how can we show this John, Jane, Bob, Alice instead of item 1? You know what to do, right? The content part, open and close a curly braces, then put item. That's this item that you have here, right? Just paste it here. Now, when you now go back, you're going to see John, Jane, Bob, Alice. If you have other ones, it's going to show. Now, this is fine, right? But there's an issue. How can we know that? Let's inspect and see. Go to your console. You can see the error here. Each child in a list should have a unique key property. So when you are doing lists, right? When you're doing lists, you need a key property. When you're mapping, you need a key property. Why? React needs to know the difference between these elements that you're mapping. It's just like a way to identify a particular element, a unique identifier. Thank you, Miriam. A way to identify a particular element. So React is just mapping li. It doesn't know the content really. It just mapping li into 4 places. That list item into 4 places. But you need to tell React that, okay, there's a distinct between these items. And to do that, React wants us to what? Put a key property. So we have an attribute. We can create an attribute. Call it key. You cannot call it any other thing. You must call it key. Equals to open and close a curly braces, right? Then what is distinct between these items? The index is distinct. The index can never be the same for 2 different elements inside this map, right? And remember, the index starts from 0 to whichever last item. So we're not going to pass the index inside here. Then save. When you now go back, if you refresh, yeah, you will not see the error anymore. So we have satisfied React. So yeah, this is how to map an array in JavaScript. So instead of like creating a whole new element, manipulating the elements, adding DOM, adding and appending and setting inner child, with this you just easily map out the items. This will even serve well. That time we are doing that form thingy, and that when we create that form, it will load it on the table. When we create that form, it will load it on the table. With this, we don't need to create elements and all those things again. We just map everything here. The only thing we need to update is the array. We'll just be updating the array when we have a new item. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you for staying to this point. And if you have any question, please go ahead and ask before we call it a day. Nafisa.
Good evening, Mr. Jones.
Good evening.
Please, I want to ask a question concerning this key property. What's the difference between you using index and ID? What's the difference?
All right, unless you have an ID that you want to use, right? Like the UUID that is exported from React. There's no much difference. Even the UUID is even better, but index will never change. Index will never go wrong. That's just the same. It can be anything that is distinct between those items. So if you are comfortable using ID, at times when you are consuming an API or interacting with a backend, trying to load some information from the database, the backend is going to give you an ID. So at that point, you don't need to use index again. You just use the ID because there is no particular item on the table that will have the same ID. The only thing React wants is that the key will have different values to identify the particular element. So there's no difference between using a UUID, that's universal base ID, or the index.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Emmanuel. Emmanuel Abaka.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Emmanuel.
Yeah, please. I haven't seen the attendance form on the page. So I want to fill it.
All right. So the attendance is automatically collected. So as far as you're attending the class, some part time during the class, the attendance will be collected. So
Okay.
we don't use attendance form anymore. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Welcome. In the absence of any other questions, I will hand the mic over to Alex. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, so thank you, Mr. John, for this amazing class. I was listening to you out and I learned a lot, trust me. I don't know for other guys, but I can't wait for the bootcamp to start building a full website, a well responsive website.